Hey guys, today we're talking about modular synthesis. So we're going to take one sound, change it into a whole bunch of awesome stuff. Let's do it. So on this program, it's called VCB Rack. It's a digital version of a Euro Rack modular system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and this is free by the way. If you want to go to their website, you can download all this for free. I'm going to right click, and it comes up with all these options. These are just the VCV ones that are made by the company. So these are just the regular options that come with the program. I'm going to start kind of from the end. So think of this whole thing, if you're familiar with electric guitars, think of like you have an instrument, which is the guitar, then you have a cable, and then you have an amp where the sound comes out. So this is kind of going to be the same. So I'm going to start kind of from the end, from the backwards side. I'm going to start with where the sound comes out, which for here is this audio right here, this audio module. So I'm going to stick it over here. And I'm going to kind of keep, it doesn't really matter how you lay it out too much, but to make it easy to see, I'm going to keep all the inputs and outputs up here on this side, and all the stuff we change it with down here. Alright, so first things first, I have to select the audio that I'm using, which is this. This is what I used to record with when I make these videos. So now this is going to run through the same thing I record with. Now, I've got this is kind of the amplifier side, if you think of the electric guitar analogy. And I'm going to have to make the instrument side just so I can get some kind of sound going. So I'm going to right click again, and I'm going to go to this very first one, VCO. And now the O part stands for oscillator, and oscillator just means whatever causes the sound in this case. So this is the initial sound, kind of like when you play a chord on guitar, that's what this is. So we can use this just the way it is. If we attach one here, and I'm actually going to add one more thing. When we start attaching things, we're going to have sound waves happening, and I want you to be able to see the waves. So I'm going to make a little module over here. It's this scope. And this is going to let you actually see the wave. I'm going to go ahead and attach these. Alright, so all I've done so far is I've got where the sound is going to come out, and I've got a picture of the sound that's going to pop up in a second. Right now there's no sound coming through, so it's a flat line. These two little wires that I've just connected, this one goes to what's going to be coming out of this. So this one here connects to that one there, that two there connects to that two, and they're going to be outputs. So these are inputs, these are outputs, and these are inputs on this module. So everything you see is going to have an input, output, and some kind of wires connecting them if we're going to use those specific parts. So we've got our inputs here, we've got our outputs, inputs here, inputs on this one. Now from here, there are four different what we call waveforms and shapes of wave, which we'll see in a second over here on the scope. So we're going to start with sine. That's the most common one. So I'm going to click here to make the beginning of a wire, and you can see the wire expand as I go across. This is the output. These are all outputs on this VCO. I'm going to go over here to the first input and drop it, and now you see that wave pop up, and it should pop up. It's mono, so it should pop up in your left headphone if you're using headphones. And mono just means it's not stereo. It's not coming out of both sides at once. It's just one side or the other. So you've got, this is the shape of that wave. Okay, I'm going to go across here. You may want to turn your volume down a little bit for this part, because these last two can get kind of loud. So I'm going to go across here. I want you to see how this wave changes as we go across. So that was the sine wave, which just looks like a sine curve in math class, because that's a visual representation of that sound. This is the triangle wave. So here's the sine wave again. Watch the graph. Sine wave just goes up and down. I'm going to try to scoot this out a little bit, see if I can make it. So we got the sine wave, which goes up and down smoothly. Then we switch over to triangle. You can see at the top now we have little points. It's still kind of smooth in the middle, but top and bottom are pointed. And the sound is a little bit more harsh. Go to the saw wave, which is right here. And this is where you want to turn your volume down a little bit if you haven't yet. You can see it's a lot more pointed on top, and it's a lot more pointed on bottom. And the last one is this one, which I can't read what that says. Oh, it's square wave. So you can see it's kind of squared off on top. It's almost a flat line on top. Okay, so I'm going to take that off so it doesn't keep playing. Now, the way this is set up, it'll just keep playing and playing and playing until you erase the line, basically, until you break the connection between the two. So we're going to change that a little bit. Second thing I'm going to add is a way to adjust the amplitude, or the loudness of the sound. So I'm going to right click again. I'm going to go to this right here, the VCA. The A stands for amplitude. And it has two separate channels basically. So we've got one here and one here. It doesn't matter which one you pick. I'm going to pick this bottom one just for now. I'm going to put it in the middle just to make it easy and make it not too loud. I'm going to connect, for example, the sine wave again to the input. You'll notice just because there's an input there, there's no sound because we haven't connected these two yet. And I'm going to go from the output over here where we were before. You see this pops back up on the graph, and we can also hear the sound. And just to make it a little bit more palatable, I'm going to hold down Control, click here again, so it lets me add a second wire over the same spot. I'm going to put it on 2, so it should come up in both headphones now to make it not all in one ear. And then from here, since we're on this bottom one, I can control the volume by moving this knob around. And on this particular program, if you watch this dot inside of here and the dot inside of this other pink one on the output side, the lighter the dot is, the brighter the dot is, the higher the volume is, the more output you have. So you can see it change as I move the volume up and down. Now since we're going in the bottom one right now, the bottom settings on this top one doesn't do anything. If I had something else going to that, I could adjust the volume to that separately than the bottom one. But for right now, this top one doesn't do anything because there's nothing plugged into it. Okay, so I'm going to erase these again, clear out these. I'm going to leave this connected because we're just going to use it anyway, so I might as well not delete that one. And then I'm going to add the third thing. I've got my initial sound over here. This is what's starting the whole sound. Again, this is just the volume knob basically, so this controls how loud or soft it is. And it's not plugged up to the output right now, so there's no sound coming out. But this is the output side over here, and this is the scope again, just showing you what the sound looks like as it comes out. So, next thing I'm going to add is a way to adjust the sound a little bit. So I'm looking for this ADSR. And each one of those initials stands for something different. So attack, this is how quickly after you push the note you hear sound. The K is what this is. This is how fast after you let off the sound, let off the note, the note starts to fade. This is the sustain, so how loud the note is as you leave the note held down. And this is the release, so after you let go of the note, it starts to decay, and this determines how long. This is how fast it starts. This is how long it takes to completely go away. So we're going to run some stuff through here and make sure that we can adjust the sound a little bit more. However you play with these knobs doesn't really matter too much because you can always adjust them back, but I'm going to start with the attack all the way down just so that as soon as I push the note, the sound starts. If I push the note, and I'll adjust this later so you can see, if I push the note down with the attack all the way up, it's going to take longer. It's going to take whatever length of time this is to actually start the beginning of the note, and you might hear it fade in. So I'm going to leave this all the way down so it'll start immediately when I push the note. So far what we have is we have the input. We can change the sound in a second, and we've got the output. Now, I'm going to hook this up just as it is. I'm going to skip this module for a second just so you hear the sound. And I'm going to adjust the frequency right here. The frequency on this one, again, this is the beginning sound, so that's going to determine how high or how low the sound is. So I'm going to hook this back up so we can hear it. That's the sound we have on right now. This is what just came up whenever I loaded the module. So I'm going to move this down. You can hear the sound change. And you can also watch this picture over here and see it as well. It's having a hard time keeping up with it because it's so low. It should be like a low rumble, probably in your left headphone right now. And as we speed it back up, you'll see that picture increase. The frequency increases. The frequency just means how many times one of these wave travels on this 1 second length of time. So however many of those waves go across, it's higher frequency. Okay, so I'm going to set it back to the middle. Now, that's all fine and good if we want to just have one sound that sustains the entire time. But we want to be able to control the sound to make different sounds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and I'm going to add this MIDI CV over here. And MIDI, if you watch my last video, just tells you that it's musical instrument digital interface, and it's a way that computers can talk to electronic instruments to determine what sound they're going to play. So the next thing I've already loaded this MIDI module, and I put it over here because this is like the input side. So this is going to become our instrument now. So this is the initial sound we had. This is going to determine what pitch we play with this initial sound. Okay, so just like I did when I selected the output over here, I'm going to select the input, and I'm going to be using my computer keyboard actually. So you don't have to have any fancy equipment for this. So you click on computer keyboard there, go to QWERTY keyboard here, which is just the keys you have on the keyboard, and there are 2 octaves to choose from. You can use the one that starts with Q, the line of keys that starts with Q, or the line of keys that starts with Z. and it's set up, if you think of that as the C on a piano, that's set up just like a piano keyboard. So you've got the black keys, and if you start on Q as C, the number 2 and number 3 on the number row will be your 2 black keys, and it goes on from there. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to start here on this vocal octave one, that V/oct, and I'm going to put it right down here to the matching one. So I'm going to match these two up, and then I'm going to go to the gate. And the gate, pretty much think of it like a gate on a fence. So it's either open or closed. So if you push something, it's going to trigger it to be open, and when it's open, that means the sound is going to come out. So when you push a key, it's going to trigger this gate to be open, and you should see this light up in here in a second. And then when you let go of the key, it's going to trigger this to be off, or the gate's going to be closed, so no sound's going to get out, just like on a fence. So I'm going to play some keys here. You can see it lighting up. It's not making any sound yet because I don't have it attached on the output, but I want you to see it lighting up first. So every note I play, I'm just playing up and down my QWERTY keyboard, playing Q, W, E over and over again. It's lighting those two lights up. I'm going to put some output here. And you'll notice now, even though I have it connected, I'm not pushing anything. And whereas before it was making a constant sound, it's not making any sound now even though it's connected, because I'm not pushing anything, and this gate's keeping it closed, keeping all the sound locked off until I push something. So now I'm going to push Q, W, E. And you should hear little clicks in your headphones. And you can also see that this is lighting up, and now this little graph over here on the scope is changing a little bit because it's picking up what we're putting out, the output we're putting through. Okay, now in order to make this really work, this one we have controlling the volume has to have an output as well. So right now it's kind of going through, it's trying to make some sound, but it's not quite working yet. So we have to go from output into an input over here, and we're going to go to this one. It's called retrigger. And retrigger just basically means that it's going to replay what is being sent through. So instead of playing it directly from here, it's going to play it from this one instead. So now if we play QWE, we have that sound. I'm going to go down to the ZW or ZXC side. It's an octave down. Here a little bit easier. And I'm going to play with the frequency and move this down. Move it down some more so you can a little bit lower. Alright, now this is where these come in, the ADSR. So right now this is just the sound that we have. And I'm going to in fact make this mono, or make it stereo again. So I'm going to hold down control so I can make another one on top of that. Put it the other headphones, now you can hear a little easier out of both headphones. And you'll see the scope is trying to keep up with us, but it's a really low sound. So I'm going to adjust this a little bit. I'm still going to leave it on the sine wave. I'm going to leave this volume where it is, but I'm going to adjust the attack. So as I go, you'll be able to see this light up. You'll see the things light up over here whenever I push the button, but then you'll see how long it takes for the attack to come in, for the sound to come in. So here's on 0. Pretty much as soon as I hit it, here's all the way up. You see I'm playing it. It's got something coming in. You can see it's moving over here. It's just happening really, really slowly. So it's really at this frequency too low for us to hear, too slow for us to hear. So I'm going to move it back down. You can hear it doing some creeping. Move back down. You can see the delay between when I hit this and when it actually comes in. Move the frequency up. Now if you don't want to play, or you don't have some way to play MIDI notes in, there is another way you can do this. I'm going to delete this. There's another way you can create sound. So this is still going to play if I connect this directly in over here. Still makes our sound. I'm going to put this back where it was. So this is, nothing's changed about this. So instead of using the MIDI in, using the keyboard like we did before, we're going to use a sequencer. A sequencer, basically it just has a row of notes here, and there's usually 8 or 16, and you can see this where it says gate is flashing, and it's flashing at a certain speed. You can set the speed with the clock. So if you move this clock down or up, down goes slower, up goes faster. If you go all the way up, it's almost a constant note. So we're going to leave it in the middle where it was. Now this pretty much does the same thing we did, except instead of changing it as we play something, it's going to change it to set parameters as we go. So each one of these rows controls a different pitch. So if you move the circle up, it makes a higher pitch. Move the circle down, makes a lower pitch. So we're going to go from this gate, just like we did before. We're going to click on gate and put it right back down here. And you can hear right now it's playing a note every time one of these is lit up. Okay, so we're going to turn some of these off. So we're going to turn all these off that we want to make the rhythm. And right now they're all playing the same note, or playing the same pitch. So we have to adjust that a little bit to be able to have a different sound. So we're going to go to this row 1, and that's for this row right here. This is row 1. We're going to go to row 1 and connect it to this. And now we can change these different sounds that are playing. If you want to stop it so it doesn't keep on going, you can hit this where it says run, that little button up here, the green button. And I found that on this particular program, for some reason, a lot of times it works better if you click right above the circle instead of on the circle. The circle doesn't always work. If you click right above it, it tends to work better. So right now this is stopping the sound from going through. Alright, so I went ahead and programmed a sound in here that I like, a pattern, and it's going to just play it over and over again. I'll let you hear what it sounds like. Yeah, and I like that. That's a cool little line, but it would be cool as a bass line. It's not really a bass line right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same exact pattern. I'm not going to change anything on here, because when I change the frequency of altogether, all of these intervals should stay the same between all the notes. So I'm just going to take the frequency knob and drop it down. So I'm going to let it run. Yeah, alright. So I'm going to change the sustained or release time a little bit. So you can hear it rounded out and sound a little more. Now I'm going to change the decay time to make it last a little bit longer after the note stops. After this triggers the note, it's going to last a little bit longer before it starts to fade. Alright, that'll work. Now, this is not the only thing you can do with this. You can add a lot more stuff to it. This is a pretty simple version of it. So I'm going to right-click one more time. I'm going to add a couple more things. I'm going to add a delay. I'm going to add it down here. So instead of going directly from, this is our output right now going to our, this is our amplifier if you think of the guitar metaphor again. I'm going to take these off for a second. I'm going to take our output from here, which is the last output we have so far, go into the delay, and then from the delay I'm going to go out to here, add the second one so it's in both headphones. Now when I play this, you should hear another note following it. It echoes it back basically. Okay. I'm going to adjust some of this. So feedback time tells you how many or how fast it is before the next delay hits. So after the initial note, how fast it is before you get another delay. Feedback tells you how many times you're going to hear a delayed note before it all the way fades out. Mix tells you how much you're going to hear the delay note versus the initial note, the first note. And color just changes the sound, the timbre of the note, the tonal of the note a little bit. So I'm going to adjust these a little bit to get the sound that I want, so it sounds nice but not like it's too close together, too bunched up. Alright, so I've got the time set to go about a dotted eighth note or so. I didn't change the feedback because I like how fast it's dying out. Didn't mess with the color. I might do that in a second to see what it does. And I've changed it so most of what I hear, if you go to the left, you're hearing more of the initial note. If you go to the right, you're hearing more of the delayed note. So I'm hearing more of the initial note, less of the delayed note right now. Let's change the color and see what it does. It's a little bit darker sound, not as much treble. More treble. And this is affecting the delay only. This isn't affecting our initial sound. This is just affecting the delay color. I think I like that better. Cool. Alright, so that's a basic introduction to this. Now, if you look, these are all the ones that come with the program. I've downloaded a whole bunch, and that's the VCB. These are all free. So these are all free from different companies. These are all free. These are all free. So everything we've got on here, if I reset everything, these are all free things I downloaded in about 15 minutes. And I have not used most of them, but they're all free, so there's no reason not to use them whenever you can. And this should pretty much get you started. So if you're interested in modular synthesis, or you want to know how sounds work, this is a pretty good way to start out, a pretty good way to play around with it, and you're not going to break anything, it's not going to cost you anything. So if there's something else you want to see, let me know in the comments or email me and just let me know. In the meantime, stay safe, and I'll see you later.